Welcome back. We're jumping straight into the deep end of our explainer today with Module 7, which is all about analytical methods and testing for cleaning validation. If you're out there keeping pharmaceutical manufacturing safe, well, you already know this is where the rubber literally meets the road. So let's just get right into it. Okay, let's dive into this idea right off the bat. The phrase "not detected" might actually just mean your method is completely blind. Seriously, treating analytical methods as a simple compliance checkbox, that is a recipe for disaster. It gives you this dangerous false sense of confidence. I mean, if your method lacks the basic sensitivity to actually see the target residue at the required limit, you aren't proving the equipment is clean at all. You're really just proving you have a bad method. Think of your analytical method like a translator. It's that absolutely crucial bridge converting a physical cleaning sample into a hard, quantitative residue result. It's really the only way to prove your validation is actually defensible. Now, a good translator, that gives you accurate, reliable safety data. But a bad one? Well, that can cause major compliance disasters. Because without fully validated methods, the whole shebang, all your validation conclusions, they're completely unreliable.
So, what tools are we actually using for this translation? Let's contrast two of the real heavy hitters. First up, high-performance liquid chromatography, or HPLC. You can think of this as your sniper. It's highly specific. It separates compounds based on polarity so you can identify the exact target residues. Now sure, it's got higher costs and complexity, but it gives you the absolute strongest validation evidence out there. On the flip side, we have total organic carbon, or TOC. This is your wide net. It's totally non-specific. It just measures any organic carbon in a rinse sample. It won't tell you exactly what the residue is, just that, hey, something organic is in there. It's incredibly high throughput and perfect for routine monitoring, even though it lacks that pinpoint fingerprinting power.
But beyond those two, you've got a whole analytical toolkit to play with. Conductivity is fantastic for ionic residues, especially when you're looking for cleaning agents in rinse samples. Then you've got UV-vis spectroscopy and FTIR spectroscopy, which acts almost like a molecular fingerprint identifier for unknown residues or cleaning agents. And of course, we absolutely cannot forget microbial and endotoxin testing for bioburden control. Every single tool has a very specific job, and selecting the right one is what really drives your overall validation rigor.
And this brilliantly illustrates why we rely on a very strict framework to prove these tools actually work. I'm talking about the ICH Q2R2 validation parameters. This is the absolute gold standard, folks. It demands that you prove specificity, linearity, accuracy, precision, LOD and LOQ, and robustness. Listen, if your method validation is collecting dust and doesn't explicitly reflect these exact parameters, you are leaving your organization wide open to regulatory action. Your methods have to be capable, and this checklist is exactly how you prove it.
So the crucial point here, the target you need to burn into your memory today is 10 to 50%. Specifically, your method's limit of quantitation, or LOQ, absolutely must sit somewhere between 10 and 50% of your acceptance criteria. If your LOQ is higher than your acceptance criteria, actually scratch that. If it's even near it, your method is fundamentally broken for that application. It means getting a not detected result doesn't confirm compliance whatsoever, because an unsafe level of residue could be hiding just below your method's ability to even count it.
Let me walk you through a real-world cautionary tale of what happens when things go wrong here. There was a contract manufacturer using an HPLC method with an LOQ of 5 micrograms per swab. But their health-based exposure limit was way lower, just 0.5 micrograms. So routine samples were passing with flying colors as less than LOQ. Looked brilliant on paper, right? But the method was literally blind to the actual safety limit. When an audit finally caught this massive sensitivity gap, the fallout was brutal. Every single prior not detected result was suddenly suspect. It required anywhere from 6 to 12 months of entirely new method development to fix. Talk about a staggering delay, all caused by just one overlooked metric.
Now, let's pivot and look at specificity. This is your method's ability to distinguish the target residue from interferences, and the operative word here is realistic interferences. Honestly, it's just not enough to test against pure lab standards. Your method has to be smart enough to ignore the stuff that'll actually be in your real-world samples. We're talking cleaning agent residues, swab materials like cotton or foam, or even weird matrix effects from your facility's own rinse water.
Here's another real-world failure for you, this time driven by a specificity gap. An HPLC method was validated, but only for the active pharmaceutical ingredient. They completely ignored the cleaning agent.
Well, as you might guess, when the supplier's cleaning agent batch varied just slightly, that unvalidated cleaning residue started to coalute right on top of the API peak on the chromatogram. Boom. Massive unexplained variability and a flood of false positive results during routine sampling. Because they didn't validate against realistic operational interferences from the get-go, they were forced to completely re-execute their entire validation.
Let's move to and see how this builds into best practices for method selection. The most mature organizations out there use a combined approach. They balance the strengths of both tools. They'll leverage the specific, pinpoint accuracy of HPLC periodically, usually to get that hard validation evidence and confirm trends. But for the day-to-day, high-throughput Stage 3 continued verification, they rely on the sheer efficiency of TOC. Documenting the rationale for why you use this combined approach, that provides incredible defensibility for your validation. It's also super important to remember that these methods aren't just static documents. They are living assets with a very distinct life cycle. They usually start in development, tackling those really challenging, high-potency API needs. Then comes transfer. And fair warning here, assuming a method will just magically transfer flawlessly from an R&D lab to a QC instrument without a formal structured protocol, that is a guaranteed way to create massive rework. Once it's safely in QC, it enters routine monitoring, where it relies heavily on system suitability checks, right up until it finally hits retirement, where the method is closed out and all that evidence is archived. And you know, that routine monitoring phase is absolutely critical for catching a silent killer, method drift. Imagine you have a gradual baseline drift over several months on your instrument. Over time, this really subtle shift secretly degrades the quantitative accuracy of your low-level trace residue measurements. If you fail to enforce strict system suitability requirements, you're essentially masking these analytical issues. If you aren't doing the trend analysis to spot this drift early on, trust me, it will escalate. You're looking at massive deviations, forced customer notifications, and some incredibly urgent, stressful troubleshooting.
Now, what's really interesting is to look at this from an inspector's point of view. When they walk through your doors, what exactly are they hunting for? Well, they want to gauge the true maturity of your analytical program. They're going to immediately look for comprehensive ICH Q2R2 coverage. They will directly probe your LOD and LOQ against your acceptance criteria. They want to know if your method can actually detect the limit in the real world. They're looking for realistic specificity testing, rock-solid system suitability, and totally rigorous investigations anytime there's an out-of-specification result. Ultimately, the depth of your validation is what signals your operational discipline to them.
Which brings us to our final takeaway for this explainer, and a question you really need to ask yourself about your own facility. Does your not detected result actually mean you're in compliance, or does it just mean you have inadequate sensitivity? I want to challenge you, go back today and review just one of your analytical methods. Check its sensitivity against the acceptance criteria. Verify its specificity against the actual cleaning agents and swabs you use on the floor. Find out before your next audit if your method is a reliable translator or if you're just flying blind. Thanks so much for joining me today.